Hey guys, it's Dr. Hayes, and I wanted to welcome you to English 102. And this first video is just sort of a introduction to what's going to be your first assignment, and which is the annotated bibliography. And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about what that assignment's going to be, and just kind of more in general, talk about and explain the concept behind a works cited page and what an annotated bibliography is compared to that, specifically working with MLA format, which is what we use in the English classes at the school. So I wanted to just kind of go over some of that, because some of you may have done a works cited before. Some of you may have even done a bibliography before, like an annotated bibliography, but you might not fully grasp the logic behind it. So I have found that in the past, students, something sort of just clicks whenever they understand why they're having to format their works cited in a very particular way, and it's so strict with a comma here and italics and indented and things like that. And so I thought I would just kind of make a video here for this first week of class to sort of explain the concept behind that, and and talk about what it's used for and how the annotated bibliography will help you in the research process. And we can talk more about this in class as well. The next video after this will be more, there's a little, I'll do a screencast on the screen where you can see actually a Word document where I've formatted how it's supposed to look and how to set up your document in MLA, and I'll show you APA as well. And so throughout the semester we'll be looking at formatting and including research in your papers in mostly MLA, but I will also mention APA as it comes up, because some of you will probably have to do papers in APA as well. Okay, so let's talk about MLA and what it's for and why we're having to use it. So you might have heard MLA before. Your teachers say, be sure to use MLA, be sure to use MLA, we use MLA, and it might not have registered to you what that's for, or what that even means. So MLA stands for the Modern Language Association. MLA, Modern Language Association. And the reason why we do what they say is because of the way our language works. So we speak English, we write in English in our classes, obviously. And the thing about English is nobody's in charge of the English language. Like there's no government office that's in charge of all of the changes in vocabulary to the language. There's no committee. There's nobody who's in charge. Multiple countries use English. Multiple cultures incorporate English into their laws, into their literature, into their research. And so English is this big unwieldy blob that kind of has rolled throughout history, picking up words, picking up French words. The French ruled England for 200 years, so a lot of our English words are French, and we have a lot of letters and sounds from when Vikings and Norse cultures inhabited Britain, and we have a lot of Celtic influences and a lot of Latin, because when the Romans sent missionaries to England and sort of converted England to Christianity, all of the clergy and everything, all of their texts were in Latin, and their prayers were in Latin. So we have a lot of Latin words. Point is, English, there's nobody who's sort of in charge of English. So if we were just gonna use the language willy-nilly, it would be chaos, and it was for hundreds of years, because nobody really was in charge. So it's sort of famously, you had people on one side of Britain who, if they traveled inland to the other side of Britain, they couldn't understand each other, even though they were both technically speaking English. So within the last 200 to 300 years at the most, people have been in sort of endeavoring to categorize and document language. The first dictionaries in the mid 1700s, and then the education system, trying to sort of teach a unified way of speaking and spelling, and agreeing upon a universal grammar system for English. And so the English started in, the 400s in Britain, and now within just the last 200 to 300 years at the most is when we've been trying to standardize it and come up with a consistent usage agreement for English. So you can see we have a lot of ground to make up for. So instead of having sort of a government body to manage the language, like some countries like France and Italy, for example, they have sort of a language committee within the government who sort of manages the standardization of the language. We don't have that. So instead of having that, we have a variety of organizations and institutions that have sort of taken it upon themselves to develop standardized usage guidelines, right, for formatting in all these various situations, memos and essays, published documents, journalism, all of these different things. There's all of these different organizations that have developed usage guidelines for the English language in various situations. When you do the time, we have the number, colon, number, space, P space, or period, M period. We have all of these like rules for how we use the language. Well, the Modern Language Association is one of those organizations. It's one of the biggest ones. It's used by just sort of general academic scenarios. The humanities use it. So like if you're gonna go on into any sort of English or literature or anything like that, we use MLA. But MLA is not the only one. You have APA, which you've probably heard also. That stands for the American Psychological Association. So they have their own sort of, these are our formatting guidelines for standard usage of the English language in various situations. And so sometimes, obviously psychology people use APA for the American Psychological Association, but other programs use it. Some nursing programs use it. Some sciences use it. So it's worthwhile to know. But that's not the only ones either. There's the Chicago style, which was sort of originated in the sort of a journalism background, but now the history departments use Chicago style a lot, and it's used. They use footnotes instead of the in-text parentheses like MLA and APA use. But there's many others. I know that there's the ACS, the American Chemical Society. They have their own. ASA, the American Sociological Association, or maybe it's American Sociology Association, ASA, they have their own format. There's one called CSE that, again, it's some medical professions use. And then you have publications like certain journals or certain newspapers, and they have their own way of how they want language and their publications formatted. And so what I'm hoping you take away from this is the point of this class and the point of learning MLA is not to memorize MLA. MLA is not the important thing here. It's learning the importance and the value behind adhering to some kind of formatting guidelines, right? Because as you go through your academic career and probably and possibly into your professional career after that, anything you write, any institution you work for, if you publish research eventually, wherever that is and whatever you're doing, they're going to have some sort of standardized guidelines that they want your writing to adhere to. And so the point of the exercises in this class is to get you sort of acclimated to the idea of a standardized formatting guideline that you can look through. You can see, oh, this is how they want this done. This is how they want this done. Yeah, I can do this, this, and this. So getting used to editing your writing and formatting your writing so that it can fit in with whatever guidelines you're being held to in any situation. So we're using MLA because it's sort of the standard academic general subject area formatting guidelines. So yeah, we're using MLA, but it won't be the only one you ever use. So you have a style manual that that came with the class that I'll be teaching you how to use, and you can kind of look up. So you're not gonna have to memorize the formatting rules, like the period and the parentheses and all that stuff. I'm just wanting you to, by the end of the class, to know how to look up what you need to look up, and how to read. This is a formatting requirement, and how to apply those rules to your specific source you're using. So that's kind of a little bit of background about works cited entries and works cited lists and how that works. A little bit more logic behind it. That's to move on to why we use it and what it's useful for. In your paper, the works cited exists. Well, the citation method in MLA and APA, it's a two-part system. Okay, so you have your list of sources at the end of the paper. In MLA, it's called the works cited. In APA, it's called references. In Chicago style, it's called bibliography. Right? So there's the different formatting groups call it different things. But in MLA, you have the works cited at the end of the paper. That's your master list. These are all of the sources that are mentioned or quoted from or paraphrased within the paper. This is the list, and it's formatted in a certain way, which we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that later. But that list it's only one part. Corresponding with that list within the paper itself, you have in-text citations. So you have every time a source is used, whether it's a direct quotation, a paraphrase, you've just sort of casually mentioned it as an example, anything like that, you have a little parentheses citation, parenthetical citation is what we call it, where you've inserted in. And think of those as like little tags, where you are tagging the spots in your paper where your sources are used. Right? So the little tags will correspond with a source on the works cited. So every source that's listed on the works cited must also be tagged in the paper. It's 1-to-1. Any parenthetical citation where there's a tag in the paper, that source has to appear on the works cited. They go together 1-to-1. It's like you can match them up like a puzzle. We will get more in detail about the specific formatting requirements for those citations and the formatting requirements for the works cited later. I just wanted to kind of, at the beginning, explain the logic behind why we use it, what it's used for, and sort of how it works. We do this because just for me, in the classes that I teach, I have about 100 students altogether. And so multiply that times all the other teachers who have students who are writing papers. If there was no standard way that all of your papers were supposed to look, it would be chaos, right? It would be, there would be no way to keep it fair. Some people would use like word art, and some people would use fancy fonts, and some people would dress it up with borders, and it would just get out of control. So there'd be no standard way to, there'd be no even playing field. So what MLA standardized formatting does is that it makes the content of your essays or writing or project, whatever it is, it makes the content be what stands out individually for you, so that your formatting is not individualized. That's all standard. Everybody is starting off with the same foot, like where you have all the same font, all the same spacing, all the same everything, so that your content can emerge as something that I can easily evaluate. And then going forward, professors in your major and in your field can see the content. So for one, it's fair to have the formatting. For two, it's easier for your reader. So because of this standardized formatting, it not only helps the writer be organized and consistent, and it doesn't only help me, the professor, be able to evaluate what you've done, it also helps the reader, any potential reader who's going to read what you've written. We, as readers, are taught this is how this means. So these are the rules of academic writing. If I'm reading and there's a quote and there's this little tag, I know that I can see that tag and flip to the works cited and easily find where this information is located, and I can go look for it myself if I want to, because that's what academic writing and research is all about, is being able to share your theories, and then the person reading it should be able to then track down and retrace your steps and see everything that you have cited and be able to trace all the information that you have used, and they should be able to find it for themselves. And so that the formatting, following the MLA formatting or APA, whatever it may be, it helps the reader easily navigate the work you've done in your research, because we know, as readers, we know that's the rule. They've used a piece of information from a source, they've tagged it, that tag links to a full entry on the works cited. I can go to that and I can see, oh, in this full entry, this particular bit of information is located on this page of this entry, and I can go straight to it, right? There's a link, there's everything I need right here. And so that's the reason behind it. For some of you, this might be just obvious, right? Well, yeah, okay, that's exactly what Works Cited is for. But we have students coming in sometimes as college freshmen who have never written a paper more than a page or two long and weren't required in high school to include sources in their writing. You'd be surprised, but there's all kinds of levels, and that might be you. You might be coming in kind of nervous. Maybe you were an athlete, and because you were really good at it, you were just kind of moved along and in your classes, and you weren't actually held accountable for knowing how to do anything. So but that moving on along has stopped now in college, so you got to know these. And so I'm here to kind of help everybody get caught up. And if this is something you've done a lot, you did a lot of research papers in high school, and you've got this frontwards and backwards, well then good news, this will be easy for you. You can just, it's more practice. Nothing is ever going to hurt you if you just to practice a little bit more. But there are some people in the class who this might be it's the first time you've ever been held accountable to do a real research project. And so I definitely want to be able to help you guys as well. The last thing I want to talk about is the specific first assignment we're going to be working on, which is the annotated bibliography. So a little bit about background about how that's going to work. You're going to, if you notice, this is our book for the class. We talked about it on the first day in class, but you might not have gone yet. So I wanted to show you. They Say, I Say. And it's all about research and writing. And I'll have another video about how to use this book specifically. But in this book, there is a readings section. If you can look in the table of contents, there's a readings, and you will be assigned several readings from this section throughout the semester. Well, the readings are divided into 5 categories, which is like basically politics, education. It's called Is College the Best Option? Technology, gender, and then like health and nutrition is the other topic. So those are the 5 sort of research discussion topics that the readings of the book are divided into. And so I'm using those 5 categories for your assignments for the semester as well. So the idea is that every one of your assignments will build on the previous one. So we're going to be replicating the long-term research process throughout the course of the semester. Too often in classes, you'll be given an assignment to write an essay or paper. You'll have 2 or 3 weeks to do it, and then you'll move on to the next one. And then you'll have 2 or 3 weeks to do that when you move on to the next one. Which in an education setting, when you're just trying to get all the information, that's not bad, but that is not really an accurate representation of how research happens in the real world, like after school, in the professional world. Research and thinking over a topic, thinking over an idea, doing a study, looking into something in depth, it's a much longer process than just a couple weeks in a class to kind of learn the techniques and crank something out. which is probably what you did a lot of in 101, English 101. So now in 102, since we're bringing research into the mix, I wanted you to get some experience with a longer term research idea. So you're going to be picking one of those 5 categories from the book, and you're going to be in that topic for the whole semester. And so this first assignment is an annotated bib. So the idea is when you've picked a category of subject area that you are going to be researching, your first step, you can't just dive in and start writing a paper. Your first step is you need to teach yourself about that subject, right? I'm banking on none of you are experts in politics, educational controversy, like higher education controversy, that's hard to say, or nutrition or gender or technology. Some of you might be pretty tech savvy, but as far as the issues surrounding technology. So the idea is for you to start broad, and you kind of need to see what's out there. Before you start writing about something yourself, you need to see what other people are saying about it. You need to, I like to say, get the lay of the land, right? You need to get your bearings. So this annotated bib is an assignment intended to help you get your bearings in your subject. So you're going to look for at least 10. I say at least because you might not be able to, you might just have 11 that are great or whatever, and that's perfectly fine. But a minimum of 10 sources of a variety of kinds. We have journal articles and books and websites. Those are kind of the biggies. But there's also YouTube videos, podcasts, blogs, which aren't as very scholarly, but in some subjects, especially technology, like that's maybe what you've got. There are interviews, TV interviews and things like that. There are all kinds of sources besides just articles and books and websites. So I want you to kind of use a variety, and we'll go in the class, we'll go into more detail about how to find these kind of sources and how to know if they're good or not. But for now, we're just talking about what the assignment is. So you'll have 10 sources, and your job is to sort of see what's already been said. Because your job as a writer of an academic piece of writing, a researched piece of writing, is it can't exist in a vacuum. You have to sort of insert your essay, your writing, into what's already been done, what already exists. You're going to be expected to have a general understanding of what discoveries have already been made, what general perspectives there already are about your topic, and then you're going to find the hole where your idea fits and let us know where you fit into the argument. For this class, that process and that part of your essays will be a lot pared down, a lot smaller, because we're just kind of practicing. In a professional sense, if this was like as your profession you're writing, it would be a little bit more of a strenuous process to establish the previous scholarship before you. But in this class, we're just kind of practicing it. So that's what this first assignment is for, is to get you to commit early to your subject area for the semester out of one of those 5. And then you're going to get the lay of the land. You're going to find at least 10 good sources, articles, books, podcasts, websites, YouTube videos, whatever, that are written about that subject, that contribute to the body of research. You could give me like a representative list of the kinds of things that people are saying already about your topic. So what makes it an annotated bibliography, not just a bibliography, a list? What makes it an annotated bibliography is that you will have the entry, just like a normal MLA works cited entry, but then underneath you will have a paragraph where you have written a description for me of the source that for each one. And so We will talk more in depth in class and on later videos. I'm planning on practicing this in class about like how to write a good annotation, right? But essentially, the annotation should have 3 things, and this is not the last time I'll go over this. It should have a summary, and it should have an evaluation, and it should have a statement about reliability. So, or relatability, maybe that's what, yeah. Basically, a summary. What is the article about? Okay, that's the main thing. Just a couple sentences at most. What is this article about? What's the main argument and gist of this article or book or source, whatever. Then you make a statement about, is it good? Like, this is what it's about, but is it a good source? And we will talk in class about what makes a good source, right? Is it written by a reputable author? Is it published in a reputable location? Things like that. And then the last element of your annotation paragraph will be how relatable, how does it relate to your specific subject area? Like, and you can use first person for these, like, this is what the source is about, this is how I know that it's reliable, and this is specifically why I'm using this for this topic. This will apply to this topic in this way, right? And it might just be a small section. This source is specifically helpful for my topic because there is a whole section in the middle about XYZ, which is what I'm writing about or what I'm researching, right? So a good successful annotation will have all of those elements: a summary, an evaluation, and a statement about how it relates to your topic, right? So I have on Canvas, there is a sample annotated bibliography that I did in grad school. It says Fairy Tales Annotated Bibliography. It was about a fairy tale scholarship, which has nothing to do with what you're doing. The subject doesn't matter. It's just, you can see the sample of what it would look like. Now, I did that for a doctoral program, so it's a little bit more intense than what I'm expecting from you. And MLA has updated their formatting requirements since then. So the citations themselves are in the old MLA formatting, not the new MLA formatting. So really, I put the sample on Canvas just so you can get a visual of what I'm describing, with an entry for a source and then a paragraph. The notations are what I specifically want you to pay attention to. How would you sort of annotate a source? So if you want to look at that, if you need some guidance, that's on there. But these are going to be due, I think we have a few weeks or at least a month until these are due. But I wanted to, at the very beginning, hit the ground running. Don't delay. Pick your subject area. Start looking to see what's out there. Maybe start compiling candidates that could, maybe be potentials for your final annotated bibliography list, and kind of encourage you to get started. One final thing I'll say about the annotated bib is it's not just busy work, in my opinion. Every semester, I have students tell me that the annotated bib process really helped them, and they plan on using it in the future when they have to do a research paper or project for another class. So this is not just me making you show your work, if you will. An annotated bibliography is also a tool you can use personally. You don't even have to do it so formally. I'm making you do it in complete MLA format with an annotation that's a little bit more official, explaining to me all about the source. But I have found for myself, and I have had students find, that the annotated bib process is actually really helpful when you're doing research, because when you first start a research project and you're going through and you're like, okay, finding sources, save this article, come back to it. It's very unlikely that you'll actually remember what it is about each article that made you save it or think that you could use it back, 20 articles ago when you were looking through things, and that was last week, and you saved it in a folder, and now you don't remember anything about why you saved most of these. And a lot of them will probably have the same or similar titles, because the topic you're researching. So an annotated bibliography is something you can keep as a running document. Anytime I'm doing a research project, especially like a long-term research project, I keep a running document, and it's basically an informal annotated bibliography. All you have to do is copy and paste in a Word document, make the link, or if it's in a note, if you're a handwriter, write it out in a note. Just write the title and the author, just something, or just copy and paste the link in a Word document so it can take you back to it when you need it. And then underneath that, start making sort of a bullet list for yourself as you're skimming through the article or the book or what have you, and make just some phrases in bullets like, this is what this is basically about, right? Or focus on the section at the end about so-and-so. Even put a page range. Pages 16 through 18 are particularly helpful because they talk about this. You might even find an actual quotation that's perfect from that article. And so instead of just thinking, oh, come back and get this quote from this article, do it now. Like while you're looking at it, cut and paste that quotation from the article into your little annotated bib document and go ahead and put the page number. So then when you're writing your paper, you already have it ready to go. And if you never use it, no harm done. But if you need it, you're not stalled out later trying to think, oh my gosh, what article was that quote in? What page was it on? This thing is 35 pages. What page was that quotation on? And so an annotated bib, what I'm having you do is more formal, and it's a paragraph, and it's something you're turning in. But you can do annotated bibliographies that are sort of a running, constantly updated document for yourself as you're doing research. It's a way to sort of remind yourself what each article or each source or each book or whatever you looked at is about. What is the pertinent information? Maybe there's a quotation or two that you want to save. And you can kind of keep it going. And it doesn't have to be as formal as what I'm having you do for the class. So conceptually, the annotated bibliography is useful because it's the first step of research. It's a lot of students, freshmen particularly, or young students who haven't had to do much intense or long-term research. They just skip right over that. And 101, we emphasize the pre-writing phase. Like, don't neglect pre-writing. You need to plan your paper, right? Well, in 102, part of the pre-writing phase and part of the planning is finding the resources you want to use and organizing them, right? So, and this annotated bib process forces you to find your sources and your research first and then write the paper. So many times students write a paper that they're supposed to write, and then they realize they're supposed to have sources, so they go find a couple and just jam them in wherever they'll fit. That's backwards. You're not supposed to write the paper and then jam in the sources at the end. You're supposed to find the sources first, use the sources and the information to develop your perspective and your opinion, and then produce the essay from what you have found and what you think about what you have found, right? The essay comes from the research, not the essay comes first and the research is jammed in later. So this annotated bib forces you to slow down and do it in order. Eventually this annotated bib will lead into a paper, two more papers that you're going to be writing for the class. But for now, I want you to focus on, I know I've given you a lot, so I want you to focus on picking the subject in the book that you want to focus on for the semester. And if you want to be really gung-ho and start doing some research and seeing what's out there about that topic, you can. But your main first task is to commit to one of those 5 subject areas. I keep pointing over here because my book is sitting right here. Focus on one of those 5 subject areas and commit to it for the semester. And then we can move on from there about how to find sources and how to evaluate them and everything like that. I hope you've had a good first week of class and of school, and I'm excited to have you as my student, and there will be definitely more videos to come. And so the next one will be a screencast about how to set up your documents in MLA and APA. But until then, you guys have a good day, and I'll talk to you later.